Hi, it's Gadget UK here again, back with the Nintendo 2DS here. So we covered this in a previous video. You can just about see, can you see, there's a bit of a bend. Sorry, if I just get the hand there, you should be able to focus on a little bit better. If you look at the top piece of metal there, you can see it's not quite straight. We reformed that in a previous video, so and we were able to solder the two contacts to reflow it, which meant that we didn't need to replace the socket. But as I said at the time, I did order a new socket, as you can see here. And I also said in that video that I would revisit this and we would replace the socket entirely to put a new one on there. So yeah, we'll do that now within this video. We'll start with those two. Yeah, I think it just lifts there, doesn't it? There you go. So we can take the battery out. It's always a good idea to remove the battery out of these things before you start any work on them. You need to do that anyway to get to the motherboard. So you can see there's a couple of screws there, a couple of screws there, and then the four down there as well. One other tip I'll give you: if you can, wear rubber gloves, some latex gloves or something, because it just means you're not going to mark the screen and things like that. But the trick now is you've got to try and prise this carefully apart. You can see it's clipped together here. There you go, you can see it starting to come apart there. Just carefully. Don't do this if you've not removed all the screws, and if it's still hesitating to come apart, just re-inspect just to make sure you have got all of the screws out that are needed. It's just this top bit here. I'm pretty sure I've not missed any screws, I don't think. No, I'm not missing any screws, am I? Let's just see if that one's out. Is that one out? Yeah, I missed a screw. This is why it pays to re-inspect. Let's just check that one. That one's not even out either. I don't know how I missed those. Yeah, so do inspect. If it's not coming apart, don't force it, because it should come apart relatively easy, actually. There you go, it's come straight off, look. So at this point now, this is where you've got to be careful, because you probably saw that there's a flex ribbon in there. Can you see that? There? So you've got to be super careful. Try and move this carefully like that. And then at this point here, this is the bit you've got to be super careful with. Get a really thin flat blade from a jeweler's screwdriver set, and very carefully try, if you can, and just lift somewhere from the middle if you can, or one of the edges a little bit, this little flap, like that. You've got to be very delicate with this bit, and then carefully the ribbon, as you can see, will disconnect. So we can put this out of the way now. So the next thing, if memory serves, is these shoulder buttons should come out, and some of the plastic edge pieces and things. So be careful you don't lose the springs. So do that for both sides. Also make sure you're working on a soft surface. You've not got screws and things underneath, because you don't want to scratch the screen up. So these bits come off, that comes off. Let's put those away. This piece here, I think, should come off. Yep, there we go. Careful not to lose these two little metal bars here. In fact, I'm going to pull those out now because I will lose them. Put one there, and there's one there. So we know where those go. They're just going in little holes either side. So the next thing to do now is to remove any additional screws. So there's a couple here holding this back blue piece of plastic here. So if we get those out, you could stick these on a piece of paper, sellotape them down, these screws, and write on the tape where they're from in the case. That's the sort of thing you could do. But if you film it like I'm doing here, you could just refer back to the video to see what went where. That's a useful tip I'll give you as well. So yeah, you've got to check the lengths of these. See, those are shorter than this one. So yeah, I need to be super careful. Make sure we get those out of the way so that I don't get those mixed up, because I don't want to put a longer screw where a shorter screw is required. What I need to do here is get it under the little black plastic flap there, and very carefully, can you see, just lift it up gently, don't force it, and then that ribbon should sort of pull out of there. But yeah, they're very fiddly, these, and you only have to just put a little bit too much pressure on there. You could break it off, and then you're in a world of hurt. Yeah, I can't get much closer than that, but there are two of these here. You can see I've lifted the flap up there from this side upwards, just very gently, and this one here, again, it's the same sort of thing. You're going to get underneath it very carefully. Don't use hardly any force at all. Come on, don't break, please, don't break. Lift it up, see that? You can see it's flapping around now. So you've got to be super careful with those. But I think that's, well, I think that's the ribbons. We've still got one here, look, for the controller. So I'm going to have to disconnect that. Oh, I don't like these connectors, seriously. Which way is this one? This one wants to go upwards. So it wants to get, you want to get underneath it there, like that, very carefully. There you go, flipped it up. And you know, like I say, these ribbons should then, in theory, pull out. Can you see that? Yeah, so we've got a connection there to the antenna. I'm not sure where to disconnect that. I could pull this off, I guess. I'm tempted to just leave that there just for now. And we need to just sort of carefully detach these here. We've obviously lifted the flaps, but these things here are just going to, look, gently pull out very, very carefully. No force at all. They should just literally slide out, look. If we're careful now, it's going to bring the speaker, and the antenna is going to be attached up there. Oh, these need to pull out as well, don't they? See, they're unclipped, but they're not all the way out. This is where some really thin tweezers or something, you know, could help you. Just grab very gently, just try and move it a little bit like that to bring it out. Look, do the same with that one. Gently does it. There we go. And I think now we can flip it that way, can we? Nothing else joined? Yeah, there we go. But the thing is now, we can access this, so we can get some hot air and stuff and heat that up and pull the connector off. The best way to do it actually is probably going to be from the top side. So what I would probably do is just rearrange this. Hang on, what am I stuck on there now? It's the speaker, it's magnetic. Yeah, just rotate this round a little bit like that. Does that make sense? And we can use hot air here. You know, I'll get some Captain tape or something. I'll isolate underneath because I don't want the plastic to melt. You know, the whole idea here is to, you know, you could move it further afield, I guess, just like that, further away. Just get some hot air on here, and we can use some pliers or tweezers and just pull the connector off. So I've moved it a little further onto the ESD mat there. You should be wearing an ESD wrist strap. It'll only cost you £3 or £4. Get one of those if you're going to be doing repairs to, you know, and I'm guessing the kind of people looking to do repairs like this, you're going to be thinking about doing repairs to iPhones, Android phones, tablets, switches, all these sort of things. That's the sort of stuff you're going to be probably looking to repair if you're interested in doing one of these. So get yourself some Captain tape, get an ESD wrist strap. We'll stick that over there. This is just kind of like heat proofing tape, so it stops some of the heat getting through to certain areas. If you've got plastic parts like that switch there, you might want to make sure that's fairly well covered. You know, you could ripple it out. And what I mean by ripple it out, stick it down there, loosely couple it. So can you see? So we've got a big bubbly sort of cage around it. Maybe pinch it a bit here, stop any air, you know, the hot air getting in. But you could stick foil around that, aluminium foil, you know, kitchen foil, the sort of thing you use for sticking in a tray, you know, before you stick things in your oven. You could stick some foil around there as well. But Captain tape and foil, yeah, those are sort of things you need to do just to isolate these things. And now we can just get the hot air on here and focus on that. It's only going to take a minute or two, I would think, to remove that. You can see the sticky pad there. There's like, well, it's a pad that normally it's white with little red dots, and you can see it's all blurred there, which may make you think this has been water damaged. It hasn't, because that's what that pad serves. It shows, you know, the red blurs out when it's got wet, so that's a you know, water damage indicator there. But it's like that because we originally, when we first did this, we just got some flux on there, we reflowed the connections, but I can't see from that distance, but trust me, we did some good connections. It's worked ever since I did that repair there in the previous video. But as you can see, hopefully, it's slightly crooked. It's kind of like pointing down this way a little bit. You know, the whole thing had a massive knock when someone plugged in the charger and it fell off a table and it landed on the end of the cord. So, you know, it bent the connector. You know, ultimately it broke the connections off. That's why we reflowed them in the previous video. That's a quick fix. We tried to straighten out the socket a little bit, and we reformed it a little bit with some pliers and things. So whilst it is working and it has been reliable ever since I did it, yeah, we just want to replace it. I wanted to show you both ways. So I'll switch the hot air on. I'm going to set the hot air to about 415. Something like that. You know, this cost me, I think, £60 or £70 a few years back, which is a lot of money, but it's an investment. If you're going to do, you know, surface mount stuff, invest in the right kit. Bear in mind we've got plastic down here, so I want to just, you know, keep this as far away as possible and just focus on the connector here. Nothing else. It will take a few minutes at least, because the metal tabs that come down the sides of this connector here, that go through the PCB to anchor and hold it on, those are the things that are going to use they're going to absorb a considerable amount of heat. There's probably the odd bit of plastic on there that connector comprises of as well, because I can sort of smell a sort of melting plasticky sort of smell, and it's going to be nothing else in the nearby area. It's going to be the plastic of the socket. Any plastic parts in the socket, they will just melt for sure. Come on, I can't grab the blooming thing. There we go, knock it off. So there we go. So if we compare the old socket to the new, you can see straight away this is nicely formed. This one's got a little bit of a bend in the bottom bit there. The connections look a bit dirty. The plastic's a little bit melted, perhaps from the heat. But comparison is a good thing to do before you start to try and fit something like this. Make sure everything looks the same. Well, these have got a bit of extra legs there, look on the back, so we might need to cut those down a little bit. And it's the same with the two here. On the motherboard, sorry, I see if I can get that to focus. On the 2DS motherboard, they're almost flush with the motherboard, as you can see on the one on the left. So yeah, I will need to just trim those down a bit. These are all things you need to think of, inspection, work out what you need to do to slightly adjust it before you come to fit it. So I'll cut these legs here, the two middle ones, flush with the same level they are there. I think they're just like level with the bottom of the connector by the looks of things, so that they sit on the PCB. Yeah, so hopefully you can see what I've done there. Just bent this one like that. It's flush with the bottom of the socket here, it's the same level. We'll just rotate that around, you might be able to just see. You can see it bent outwards. So I need to do the same thing with the one next to it, and it's a case of just, gripping it like that. It's, as low down as you can, and then just carefully bend it this way. So what some people do is use hot air to fit it. So you could heat that up now for a few minutes again, and then just slide your new socket into place. But the way I like to do it is get some flux and desolder braid on there, and just have a go at manually desoldering this. Cleaning up the solder, try and get the solder off there. Now it can be difficult on the wings. It looks like we've managed it there. I'm not sure. Let's try this side here. And when I say the wings, I'm talking about the connections on the sides here, where the connector marries. There's two prongs that go through all the way for the other side. And it holds it in place. So yeah, I think we've done all right there, because I can see two gaps. We might need a bit more flux and solder braid on the other side, just to make sure there's holes there for the connector to go through. And then we want to just very carefully now, same thing, use the flux and desolder braid on the pads on this side. I can't really see from this distance what I'm doing here. I think there's only a couple. Got one there, look, that's the centre, one of the two centre pads, that's the other one. So you can see the two centre pads there, and again I've got a ground point here, I think. Yeah, so those aren't unblocking as well. I'm going to need some more flux on those and a bit more heat, I think. And the other thing you can do is carefully flip it over. Add a little bit of solder if you need to, because if you add solder, yeah, you'll fill the hole, look. But, if you just leave it long enough, I'm using a 15-watt iron here, you will find, can you see that's almost unblocked? You'll find that just adding a bit of extra solder and flux, you can unblock these things. There's a bit of solder there, see if we can get rid of that. Yeah, not quite. Again, just add a bit more solder. And we'll see if that will assist us. Look at that, that's unblocked. If we clean all the flux off there, you can see how much cleaner that's come up already. Look how great that area looks now. It looks really good. If I'm lucky and I've got all of the solder out those little eyelets, the holes there, the new connector should just literally slide on. Yeah, so you can see I bent the pins down in advance there. The key now is try and just get this into the right position. And that's it, I think. Actually, it went straight in. No problems at all. Now, what I would do now is carefully flip it over, hold the connector so it doesn't fall out, press it from underside upwards, make sure that your metal tabs are through here, which they are, so we've got no issues there, and just solder these. This is how easy it is. The hard part is removing it and blocking the holes. This is the super easy bit. So yeah, just get a bit of solder onto one, one point like that. Let's say you're pressing it from the other side. Might need a bit of flux on there to get that to flow out. It's getting hot on the other side. Just a little bit to hold it, look, that's all we need. You can reflow these afterwards. Same thing up here on that side. Yeah, that side's a bit easier, but again, the metal can there where my finger is getting super hot. But again, I need to just press it down, I think, so let's just try and press it, heat it, hold it, let go, ow. And we could just do the other ones now. The one on that side, look, that's going to be easy. So using Mr. Magnifier here, you know, a cheap magnifying glass with a stand and stuff, I've just adjusted these slightly. I pushed each one back a tiny bit and downwards, so they're totally in line with the pads. I'll put you on macro so you can have a quick look. So I can't tell, that looks like it might be crooked, but if you look at the pad on the bottom, the pin is right in the middle of it, and it's the same with that one. So the next thing to do here is just add a tiny bit of flux in there. We can get that out with the toothbrush in a minute. We'll clean that up, it'll look nice and clean. And again, you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing here. You're just going to have to take my word for it, watch the way I do it, and have a go yourself, really. So we're going to get some solder onto the tip of the iron here, a little bit like that. And you're going to, let's say you will need magnification. I would normally do this, but looking through this while I'm doing it. But we'll just have a go without that, and then I might have to try and just see whether I need to do anything with the magnifier afterwards. Just touch each pin. Can you see that? Look, there's a blob there. That pin is joined a pad, and the one next to it, the pin is joined a pad. Now the reason these don't just join together, you know, and short out, is because we've got that decent flux on there. If you use something like Chip Quick or Amtech flux, then and you don't put a giant blob of solder on your iron, you can theory both pins at once and they won't bridge. Does that make sense? So yeah, like I say, I'll inspect off camera now and make sure that's okay, but I think we're done. So yeah, connections are good. You can actually see the two solder points from there, so we know we've not got an issue. So the final steps now are just cleaning up and reassemble. I'm not looking forward to connecting all them blooming ribbons up again because they're painful, but it's like any of this stuff on this. If you just take your time and are super careful, super slow, it's not an issue. The problems occur when you rush. You try and force connections, you know, when they're not ready. Yeah, carefully does it. There we go, that's that tape off. And we can just clean around here now. Like I say, I'll get rid of that little red sticky pad in a minute because you know what, it looks a blooming mess. And we can go up the sides and stuff as well, just to make it fairly clean there. But hopefully you can see the socket's nice and straight now. That last one was crooked. That's like a brand new socket from the factory. And then the final thing I usually do is just, you know, get some paper towel under here, because what you don't want is IPA going everywhere. An IPA is just like pure alcohol, 99.9%, and just sort of tilt the board a little bit towards the paper towel here, and we can just get the toothbrush in here, look, and we can get right in and clean up all around that, right into the edges, right inside this edge of the socket there, and it should just look brand new when we're done. That'll do. So, in terms of reassembly, you can see I've just roughly lined the board back up in the right place. The speaker obviously needs to go into its little cavity down there. I've just lift this up because I think, yeah, we've got room to do this. Speaker needs to go into there. Something else to point out while you're here, make sure these button things are, you know, the button silicons here are sat in the right places. If you've got bad buttons, you know, a button's not working in the right direction, you know what you need to do? Cotton bud, you know, Q-tip, with a little bit of that IPA, 99.9%, and just gently rub, not a lot, because black stuff will come off there. It's like a carbonised graphene or something similar type conductive pad. You know, there's like stuff stuck on the silicon there. So you just want to, you know, just gently touch it. So you could do that. I know the buttons on this. I know the buttons on this are good as new. Make sure you don't lose this button from down here. Look, this I think goes like that there. And the other thing to do if your controls aren't working very well is you wipe these here again with IPA. Wipe the copper. Can you see the copper contacts here? They're gold plated actually. So yeah, try and get the speaker so that that's going to fall into the right position. But we need to. Oh god. Yeah, we need to stop knocking these buttons around because that's going to cause me no end of trouble. And we've got to somehow lift these up here very gently and feed them through that hole, look. This is the tricky part of this, like that. And then we need to do a similar thing with all the ribbons down here. There are 3 ribbons or so here that need to get aligned properly, and the one for the controller. Yeah, and I think these ones will be a bit easy because you can just lift the PCB. I think the hard one is going to be, and I can't see the blue thing now, it's that sideways one there, where's it gone? Yeah, the hard ones are these. You need to pull one there to the left so that it comes up there. I can't see it. This one here, look, you can just literally carefully pull it out. That one there, carefully pull it out. So that's those. I've done the controller one over here. Hang on. Yeah, the controller one over here, again, if you just lift the board just a little bit, you can carefully, hang on, can't do it now. Pull it back a little bit like that, look. So that it sits out here. I think that's right. Yeah, I think I'm right there. And then it's just this one here that's inside here, and we might just be able to just carefully pull it to the side. I don't know, I can't see the blooming thing now, look. There we go, can you see that? So that's through, that's through, that's through. This one's here, I think it went there. And I think that's it. We can sort of just try and lower this now into position if we can. Yeah, like that. And then just very carefully put a couple of screws in, make sure your ribbons are through first. A couple of screws in to hold it in, and then start to reconnect things. Let's just move that speaker into its position as well. I've got all the screws in, they've all got circles around, so, and they're all the same length, these ones, apart from the two that hold the plastic piece at the top here. So yeah, this is what I would describe as the hardest part. Use some tweezers or something and very carefully try to reseat these connectors, you know, the cables here, into the sockets. You need to make sure the flap is fully up first, and be very, very careful, because the last thing you want to do is break this. When you get it right, can you see that? The wings, there's like a little bit that stick out on each side of the head of the thing. They sit perfectly flat, married up with the socket. And the way I would do this, put this on a flat surface and just kind of hold it down a little bit like that, very carefully, and then pull the flap over. Very carefully, like that. There we go. If it's not right, I may find when I power it on, we don't have video. Well, we can always just carefully take the lid back off and try and just carefully reseat these. But this is the technique. Like I say, tweezers, and be very gentle. These ribbons are super fragile. Seriously are. This is where things could go awry. You know, you can make things, create some sort of irreversible problem here if you don't give this sufficient time and patience to make sure that it's in. Yeah, so you can see the wings at the sides are married up with the plastic, there's no gap. And then, as I say, you very carefully try and pull this flap forward and do it in such a way that you're trying to, you know, you're moving onto the surface of it, not just the edge of it, because you could break it. And very carefully flip it down like that. So you can see that's those two done. Hopefully they're in sufficiently. I haven't got any tweezers to hand, I do have some. And you've got to carefully feed it back into the thing. You may be able to just use a flat blade or something like this just to help you try and get it into the right position there. This is the fiddly bit, these small ones. Small ones, look, can you see that's gone in? And they've got wings again, so can you see that? Press the wings on the sides until it goes flush. Try and hold it forward, you know, hold it into the socket. And the same sort of thing again, carefully turn and lower the flap. And then maybe just press down with your nail like that on the full length of it. Just make sure it's flat. Can you see that? That's back in. Same with the other ones. So in terms of difficulty, that one was the second hardest difficulty, because there's a little gap here. You've got to kind of pull it back a bit with tweezers and push it under. But that one again, I managed to do all right. This one is hardest because the cable, you know, it comes over like that and then it folds that way. So you've got to flex. So you've got to use tweezers. You put a magnifier in front of you. I had the magnifier in front of me like this while I did it. And use this as well. You know, I've got the tweezers here holding it, trying to lift the flap carefully, trying to get it in very gently, and then it slid through, and then I was able to close the flap. So I think that concludes all of the ribbons. You know, they're all joined up here now. I don't think I've missed anything. Power switch, be careful when you get the board back in, just to make sure it's, in fact that's the lock switch, isn't it, for the power, so it doesn't get knocked on or off, I think. Just make sure you've got that lined up, because you could easily break the notch off that switch, so do make sure that's right before you start sticking the screws in. But as I say, all the screws here, they're all the same length, these ones on the board at this point, and they've all got a circle around, so you can't go wrong with those screws there. Does it hook there? Yeah, I think it hooks there like that, look, there we go. Can I put the SD card back in? That might just help hold it in place. Yeah, there we go. We can get those little bars back in. Do you remember I said don't lose those little metal bars? One obviously goes down here in the middle. it might be an idea to use some pliers to help me get that back in, actually, because I'm just going to end up dropping it. There we go, so that's that one in, and that's that side done. So the power switch obviously goes on this side, and again, it's one of these, it's a bit of a puzzle. It's definitely going to go this way, like that, but then this has got to go the right way, and it can only go one way. And I think it goes that way up, actually. I think you have it in there like that, do you? And again, you've got to try and get the notch lined up, look, I think. Have I got that right way up? Yeah, I think I have, look. So if we try and slide that, let's just try and slide the switch and see if it moves it. Yeah, can you see? It's moving the switch there, so that's right. Again, we've got a little bar, needs to go in here. Just push it down, make sure it's in. Yep, it is. Yeah, so the best advice I can give you with this blue piece of plastic here is either fit this before you fit all the screws, or do what I just did. Can you see? Unscrew that one there, so it's almost out, and this one here. And the board's got enough flexibility to allow you to just clip that back on underneath there. So it's all perfectly aligned, so we'll just tighten those back up, and then we'll just put the 2 screws in that hold this blue piece of plastic in place. These are the ones that are shorter. I'll show you, hang on. Can you see that? They're about half as long, the 2 that go into this piece here. And with regards to the 2 screws you'll have left over, they're the same length as the ones that have the circle around. They go here, one goes there, one goes there. There's no markings, so you could easily overlook those and go, how on earth have I got 2 screws left over? So yeah, that's where they go, there and there. So we got the same swearing point they had in the previous video here. These are the hardest bits to get back on regards to the case. Make sure the spring is still in there, and you've got to hook it under the PCB. Can you see that? Just down here, it goes under the PCB, the plastic, and then you slide it into position so that the notch is in here. But can you see the spring? The spring, you need to sort of put something in there, straighten it out, and try and get it to go under and onto the little thing underneath. There's a little switch underneath. There you go, I think I've just about done that. And then just test it, make sure it's clicking. Yeah, that is hard to do. So then we need to finally get this back in here. And I think it goes that way up, the same way these do. So the copper, the copper contact side here is underneath. Make sure the flap is up, and it's a similar thing where you're going to need to use tweezers and magnifying glass and try and get it in. Oh, you can see I've got it in straight away there. Excellent, first time, straight in. And we just carefully now use something to pull that flap down with very carefully. You don't want to break it. There we go, I've done it. And then super carefully move the lid back over here, I think, and put it back together. So before I've put all the screws in, I've just got the battery held into the back, as you can see, switched it on just to make sure it's working. The screens are working, that's a good sign, isn't it? Touch is working. Let's try the controller there, that's working. I'll stick a game in, I'll do this off camera, we'll just test all the buttons, I'll report back in a minute. So all the buttons and everything work, the game card works, the SD card works. I think I covered in an earlier video how to deal with the right protect switch on this. So I had a hair on the screen there. So if we now try plugging in the power, it's, I forgot where it is now. Oh, it's on the back here, isn't it? Yeah, so if we plug the power and just watch the LED, hopefully this should work first time. Look at that, straight on. So, we've got a nice, good, brand new connector there, and the LED's working. Let's test the camera. The camera is the only thing I haven't tested. The camera was the last ribbon, that one that leads to the other side of the case there. That's for the camera. So if we forget how you do this now, how do you use a camera? Yeah, there we go, you can see the camera's working. Anyway, hopefully you found that interesting. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.